My guest today is a gifted energy worker, mentor, and guide, and is frequently described as a magic maker by those who work with her. She's the author of Coming Home to You and has been featured in Forbes, The Telegraph, GQ, Red Magazine, and numerous other publications. In this episode, we talk about reconnecting with your intuition, navigating life's challenges and changes, and understanding the ancestral patterns that may be driving your life decisions. Enjoy the episode. Hello, listeners. Thanks for joining another episode of the Skin I'm In podcast. I'm your host, Chanel, and this is a place where women can tune in to gain peace through clarity, purpose through inspiration, and the permission to be themselves through the stories of other women. If you're enjoying these episodes so far, click the like, share, and subscribe button so that more women like you can be positively impacted by the stories in this podcast. Welcome to the Skin I'm In podcast, Caroline. It's great to have you here.
So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, when I first came across your Instagram, I was instantly drawn to your desire to heal and cause healing for others. And the more I dug into your posts and then went on a tangent on your website, the more I wanted to know about you and how you got to doing the work you are doing now. So tell me, you used to work in corporate and now you are a coach, you're a healer, and you're like a channel to the source for your clients. How did you get here?
Oh gosh, well, I guess it's quite the story like most people have. So what I would say is from a very young age I was always very connected, intuitive, quite a quiet, introverted child, a very serious child actually. No one believes that when they know me now because I'm predominantly, silly and like a joke. But I was definitely quite a serious child and very, very connected. So I can remember being very empathetic, very intuitive. And then I think, as often happens as I grew up and got older, went into my early 20s, that really started to be quite suppressed, and it became much more about what I say is like the masculine, the logic, the reason. And I went into the corporate world. And I spent about 14 years working for a management consultancy. And it was actually after the birth of my second child that I remember just this nudge and this feeling that started coming, that I wasn't quite on the right path, that it was a bit off me being in the corporate world. And I did what I think a lot of people did and just ignored it and reasoned with it, and was very, very attached to a fear-based story of, well, you've worked really hard, you've got good grades, you've got a degree, you've climbed the corporate ladder. Like, it's ridiculous to think about anything else. And then what happened, which I think happens to a lot of people, is like the universe threw like a pebble at me. So like I was getting the nudges, I wasn't listening, so I got a rock. And then I wasn't listening to the rock, and then I got a massive boulder. And what happened to me is that the more that I didn't listen to that nudge, the more disconnected I got. So I was like having really bad anxiety, I was having panic attacks. Everything was going wrong really at my corporate job. Promotions I was supposed to get didn't happen. Childcare was nearly impossible. Like, it was thing after thing after thing. And I ended up, it was the beginning of, it's about 7 years ago. It was the beginning of the year. And for some reason, I decided to sign up for this yoga course. It was 3 weeks intensive, and it was at 6 a.m. Had 2 very young children. I really felt like I was supposed to do it. So I'd get up at 6 a.m. I'd like to scrape the frost off my car. I'd go to this yoga studio. And about a week in, I started having really profound experiences. And about 10 days in, I was seeing like colours. I was like feeling very, very weird and connected. And about 10 days in, I got shingles all over my body. And I went to the doctor and he said, "You're really burnt out. I'm going to sign you off for like a month." I said, "I'll take 2 weeks." It was like ridiculous when I look back at it, but I'll take 2 weeks. And I basically went home and went to bed and slept. And the more that I slept, it's like I finally went quiet and listened. And it was in that moment I was like, right, I'm not on the right path. so what is that path? And then this is where it all started happening. And there's many, many stories, which I'm sure we'll get into, about how I got from there to 7 years later where I am now. But that was the beginning of my journey of connecting back to that intuitive, sort of gifted, magical child, I guess.
I feel like you would be someone that can answer this then, because when you were talking to me about your childhood, I'm like, do you know who I was as a kid or something? Because it's identical.
Yeah.
And so when I think of my childhood, it is exactly the same. And so I would love to know your perspective then on people who are like that as children and what they could be working on to help them get on their soul's mission. Because I think that a lot of the time we forget, like you said, we forget. I suppressed because I was made out to, feel like I was a weirdo. They sent me to the principal's office and
Yeah.
things like that. Like, she's odd. I would sit and ponder under a pine tree and think about astrology and my life path numbers and like all this random stuff as a child. But I was made to feel like I was crazy, basically. And so I spent my life suppressing that until I hit 31 and everything fell apart. And I was like, oh my God, I need to find myself again. I need to find her again. So I anticipate you come across this a lot in the people that you work with. And what would be that kind of guidance or advice that you would give to someone who used to be like that as a child and maybe misses being that person and wants to reconnect?
So I give this a lot to my children because I see these very intuitive, empathetic, gifted children. The most important thing is, rather than asking yourself all the time or asking your children, what do you think, what do you think, what do you think? It's like, what do you feel, what do you feel, what do you feel? So you won't hear me say to my children, what do you think about that? Say, what do you feel? Now, by doing that as an adult or as a child, we are teaching a skill, which is, the mind is limited and coded by the perception of the past and what it's been fed by generations, society, and experiences. Our body is all knowing, right? We're not taught how to honor what we feel and what our body is telling us. We're told it's all about what you think and logic and reason. Now, as women particularly, that is where our greatest superpower lies, is like our ability to use our body and to feel and to experience and to be intuitive and to be connected. So that is one of the key things, is that we've got to get back into the body, because that's what happens when the mind takes over. The mind and the fear are very close friends, and we become limited and our perspective gets narrowed, and all of a sudden the lens through which we see the world is clouded by coding. Very, very different with the body. So this is the place that I want people to start, is you can ask yourself, yeah, what do I think? But like, what do I feel? What's my heart telling me? What's my body? And there's a very simple way to do that, which is, does it expand me or does it constrict me? So whether you're thinking about getting in a new relationship with somebody, or you're thinking about going on a different path, or you're thinking about a decision that you're making for today, you're just going to ask yourself, is it expanding me or constricting me? And that's your body saying, go here, go here, go here. And the more that we can lean into the wisdom of the body and how we feel, the more magic unfolds.
And you can apply that to everywhere in your life. Because I'm just thinking there are, a lot of single mums that listen to the podcast, or women who are in situations that they want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you apply the same, is this expanding me or constricting me, to those conversations, or is it a different approach?
No, I mean, you can absolutely apply it to those situations. And, certainly, I mean, this has been my experience. I don't know whether you know this, but I've been going through a divorce over the last few years. And it was one of the hardest things that I had to do, was listen to that inner knowing that something was off, because there was so much fear wrapped around that, particularly around guilt and responsibility towards my family unit and my children. And that's the hardest thing I've ever had to overcome, because I was consumed by responsibility for everybody else, and so used to it being about everybody else's needs above my own. But my body knew, it was like, this is off, this is off, this is off. And actually, we often don't want to look at the things that we're feeling off because it's so overwhelming, the change it will bring and the darkness that we have to go into. It's like the hero's journey, right? We have to go right into the underworld to be able to come out again. And that is really, really terrifying. But yes, particularly in big situations where you're being called to make these life changes. And what I would say, and this is advice that I would have wanted when I was right at the beginning of this journey, is please don't feel that you immediately need to do something with that information. Because that was the bit I felt so overwhelmed by. I was like, well, if I feel it and recognize it and observe it, I've immediately got to act. That's not true. It starts with the observation. It starts with curiosity. And then from there, things that would have seemed incomprehensible, whether that was a conversation that you were going to have, will show its way to you over time. But at the beginning, it's just about being curious and listening to that part of you. And that's where we start.
And what was the thing, if you obviously feel comfortable sharing, that made you think something's off? Like, was that something within you? Was it like could you hear something? It's like that meme that, before you were saying it threw a pebble and then it threw a rock. And I'm like, and then the brick comes and then the boulder comes and then there's the whole avalanche. So were there things that you thought to yourself, ooh, like that doesn't feel right? Like, and what were those things?
So I have to be really respectful because obviously, I really want to respect that relationship. But what I would say is that for me, there was a wider pattern that I was seeing in my life, which was it was based on over giving and taking responsibility for everybody, whether that was a relationship I was in, the team that I was running, how I was with my clients. Like there was definitely a theme, which is I give, I give, I give, and I take responsibility. So it was wide reaching. So for me, it was really looking at what sat beneath that, like where did that come from? Like what experiences I had in childhood, what stories had I developed, and how was that driving these patterns in my life? And as I started to go into the depths of me, I started to realize that actually relationships weren't built on the foundation that I wanted to. So as I addressed the foundations, it became quite apparent that when I was not in the energy of being somebody who was giving or taking responsibility, that there was an issue. So that's where it started from me.
Oh, that resonates, Caroline. That resonates so much. I think of some of my past relationships, and I think that a lot of women listening to this can resonate with that too, that giving. And I think that once, and I don't know if this is true for you, but once I started doing the work on myself and healing and putting boundaries in place and wanting to create a better life for myself, the conflicts that would come up or the people that would fall away from my life really became clear. And as you said, and I love that you explained it in this way, that the foundations weren't right. And so how are you meant to build anything on a foundation that's not solid or safe, and to be able to keep up the walls of that house, the house that you're creating for yourself to exist in.
And it's really interesting for me now is my whole priority and perspective on life and business is very different. So actually one of my fundamental values and things that I seek now is safety, right? Feeling safe in relationships, feeling safe in my business, feeling safe with money, feeling safe with myself. Like that is a really big thing that has come up for me. And actually a real protectiveness of that and a prioritization of it is like, does it make me feel safe? Does that person make me feel safe? That's become really, really important. So what I would say, and this feels important to say to people I think are going to hear this, is that when you go through or are going through or about to go through this big period of like chaos where it feels like everything is dying, right? And that you cannot see anything but wasteland. It's in those moments that it's the most potent catalyst for transformation. And that actually, when you are in it and you feel like you see nothing, it's just like dark and a void, that is when the biggest shifts and magic are happening for you. So to just really, really trust that, and trust that there's a greater force rearranging things so that you can be set free and go on to the next path. And often that period, certainly to me, lasted way longer than I wanted to. I remember being on my knees, like praying, like please, enough, a couple of years, and like I don't know whether I can take much more. But now I'm on the other side, like I can see, my gosh, like the magic and the truth and the freedom that's in everything. So that, I feel that was important to say.
That is profound. Like that vision that I just had of what you were explaining. And, again, I think that would resonate with so many women. I think that a lot of us have been there at one point or another. And if we haven't, it is coming because there is always going to be that shift when you're ready for it. And I really believe that things come to you when you're ready for it, when you're ready to see it, when you're ready to hear it, when you're ready to actually move to that next part of your soul's mission, your journey, your evolution, and your healing. Intuition comes up a lot on this podcast, and you being someone who's so connected to your intuition, if there's people listening, and I'm sure there are because I used to be one of them, having suppressed my intuition for so long, trying to reconnect to that intuition, how can you tell the difference between what's comfortable then and what's safe? And how would your intuition know the difference, I guess? I guess when you're connected to your intuition, you would know the difference. But let's say you're not really connected to your intuition. How would you be able to tell the difference between that safety and comfort?
Well, first of all, recognize that the ego that's ultimately there to protect us loves comfort, right? So its job is to keep us in comfort zones. So this is why it relies a lot on fear, because fear helps us stay where we are. Intuition is a feeling. It's not mind-based, and it's in the body. It isn't loud like the ego. It's like a whisper. It's gentle. It's like a nudge. It's soft, right? It is not the... Imagine you're at a party. I've never given this analogy before, but this is how it feels. It's not the really loud, in-your-face party guest. It's that quiet, loving, present person who just slips up, sits next to you and whispers in your ear, like, look this way. Like, that's how it feels. There is a gentleness, a quietness, and a peace to it. You feel it in the body. Don't mistake what happens after that for it being wrong. So often we get these intuitive nudges, and it's like you get this sense of walk this way, and you start walking, or you start exploring it. And then all of a sudden you hear these steps behind you, and there's like this presence, and it's like got this big book, and it's like, but what about this? And it's fraught with danger, and don't go here, and remember what happened here or happened to this person. It's all this information. That's not intuition, that's the ego, right? So I want people to be able to recognize that there is a softness. The intuition often comes in moments of like stillness and quietness, and it's like a whisper and a pull and a tug, and it happens in the body and not in the mind. What happens after those intuitive nudges where the fear in the voice comes in doesn't mean your intuition is wrong. It probably means it's right. Because if the ego feels the need to kick up such a fuss about it, there's got to be something in like the expansion, the soul's growth that's happening because of it. So often intuitive nudges do not feel comfortable, and that's when you know you're onto something.
Oh, that gave me tingles. Just thinking about that, that ego piece. And often, if I recall the times where I was just like, oh, I was off.
Yes.
But it brought me to the next place I needed to be, that got me here. And so I recognize now that everything is meant to happen for a reason. no matter how hard it is. And I feel like the harder ones are the ones that are opportunities to really crack yourself open and do healing work.
Yeah.
And they've been like the greatest moments of my life. And so when I think of, what it would be like to work with someone like you and what are the things that I would come to you for, what are you finding clients actually do come to you for?
I mean, I get a huge variety of clients. So I can work with sports professionals, people in the public eye, entrepreneurs, all sorts. But there is a common theme, I would say, that's woven in. They don't always realize it when they first come, but it is a desire to connect deeply back into who they truly are and connect to something greater. Like, that's what I would say is the biggest gift I give my clients, is connecting them back to the truth of who they are, their power and their connection to all that is. And that is the most freeing thing, because it enables people to come here and be more of them, give more of them, receive for all of them. And that is the bit that's woven through everything. And what I would say my skill is to go beyond the storyteller. So I often say, when clients sit in front of me, the first thing that you're presented with is the story they want to tell you, right? So they'll give you this kind of like facade, maybe not even meaning to, but you can read a lot in how they're coded, the way that they view their life. And my job is to get behind what's sitting here. So speak to this person, and as the walls come here, then the shadows come. So we start speaking to all those different parts, all those different shadows, and then we integrate them as a whole. So there's no separateness. And behind that is like the sweet spot. And then once we get in there, this is when magic starts opening up, synchronicities, more abundance, more freedom, more love, manifestations, because it comes from a place of wholeness. But we've got to go through all of that work to get there. Does that make sense?
100%. Does that come from a need that was kind of suppressed in childhood, or is it greater than that?
Yeah, I mean, I think predominantly it comes from childhood, but I think that we're born into a world which is focused on separateness and divisiveness. So whether that's around not being enough, whether that's about pitting one thing around another. So like, you're right if you're this, you're wrong if this, Republican, Democrat, this, that, pro-vaccine, anti-vax, everything is geared towards separation. And that ripples through our relationship with ourselves, is that we all have shadow parts of ourselves that we repress, that we're ashamed of, that we think are too much, that we're embarrassed by. And then often that shadow part's playing out in different parts of our life. It's either in the driving seat or it's narrating. And our job is to actually go to that part, which is often found in the little us, do the inner child work. And that's when there's a lot of healing that takes place, because we're not at war with parts of ourselves. We're not disowning parts of ourselves. It's like all parts of us are welcome.
What's your perspective then on the last few years? Because there's been such divisiveness, and
Yeah.
you have one side saying it's the Great Awakening, and the other side saying it's the Tower of Babylon or something, and like everything's going to fall down. So, what's your perspective on what you've seen over the last 4 to 5 years?
I feel like it has been astonishing how much fear we have been fed. When people are in fear, they're easy to control, right? And I've always said the greatest gift that we can give our children is to think independently. So I don't want my children to think what I think. I want my children to question. I want them to question the education they're getting, what their teachers say, what their parents say. And there's no hierarchy here. So who's to say that I'm right? Okay, so we can see this a lot in the spiritual community, is like, because people feel they've done the work and they've healed and they've evolved, that they are right and someone else is wrong. That is absolutely not true. It's not about right or wrong. My view on the last 5 years is that the primary objective has been to create as much division and separateness, whether within people or communities or the world. Yeah. our job is to try and go beyond and above that, which means being able to sit with opinions that you might not agree with, to actually take a moment to think, well, maybe there is no right or wrong here. And I feel like this isn't binary, whether it's the Tower of Babylon or a great awakening. There is a shift and a movement of energy, right? Whatever way that you look at it. And every single one of us is contributing to where that energy decides to settle. So this is why I'm so passionate about doing this work. It starts with the individual. So the more that we heal, the more that we break ancestral patterns, the more that we do the work, the more that we help our children do the work, the ripple effects go beyond anything. So that this right now is a perfect time for us to take absolute radical responsibility for us, right? For our healing journey, for our wounds, for our ancestral patterns. And then that is where we're going to see the biggest shifts.
Ancestral patterns keeps coming up for me for some reason in the last few conversations that I've had on the show. How would you explain it to people as ancestral? Because I've been talking to a few people who do family constellations.
Yes.
And so is that the ancestral patterns you're talking about, or are we talking about behaviors that we're passing down generations?
Yeah, but all sorts of things. So basically, when I talk about ancestral patterns, it is, if you think about how each of us are so formed by our upbringing and the stories and the energy that our parents have held. And then if you look at stories that go back and back and back and back, it's just fed through. So if I look at like a big one for me is like down my dad's lineage, is that you have to work really hard. It's got to be a graft and it's got to be hard to create anything or to deserve abundance, right? That's the way that it has to be. So that I could see that going back 5, 6, however many generations. And that is in the language that was used, in the behavior that was demonstrated, and what I was praised for. Like, you can see it coming through. When we become aware of it, I can then use my language and my behavior differently for my children. Now, I also think beyond just the kind of more mind-based conscious work like that and the subconscious work, there's things that happen in the body. So like the body is storing trauma, and that's being passed down, particularly through female generations, into the children that come. I feel this is most applicable to you, by the way. So that's really important, that it's feeling it within the body. Now, this is where the work becomes more spiritual and energetic. So you will potentially be able to feel. So when I'm coming into your left-hand side, like a bit of a, oh, there's a pull here. Okay, where does that lead to? What's that made up of? Like, how can that be released? And there's a brilliant energetic meditation visualization that you can do, where you literally you go into meditation, you sit in a circle and you invite, say, your female line, as many generations as wants to come. And then you ask them for permission to release whatever it is. And then you can start literally feeling into your body where you're holding on to physical pain. It might look like an object, a shape, or a color that you get to release. This work is like nuts when you start doing it, because you can feel the support on the other side of what they're ready to release. So you've got the energetic piece, and then you've got the conscious and subconscious piece. And if you do all of it, it's amazing.
So I'm really curious as to why the shoulder pain has come up for you and why you're asking me to work on that.
Because I'm feeling it in your body. So I'm feeling around the left-hand side of your body. So when we have things going on around like the feminine, female, maternal line, it will often feel it in the left-hand side of the body, right?
Mm.
And then when it comes in through like the shoulder, this is like a opportunity to see where we're bearing responsibility for the female lines that have been before. And that felt particularly pertinent for you. So we haven't touched on this much, but when I work with my clients, I use a lot of different intuitive scales. So I use clairsentience, which is the ability to be able to feel things in my body. So I can literally take on your physical state and see where things are. Clairaudience, where I can hear messages that are coming through. Claircognizance, where I just know, and clairvoyance, where I can see things that come through. That combined with mediumship, where people who've passed, I can get messages from my clients. So there's all sorts of things that go on when I do this work. And what I often notice when clients come to me is usually they have like pretty good intuition and pretty good clairsentience. They're empaths, they can feel things. And another thing I do is really help them build those skills of being able to channel a lot more information that's coming through and connect to guides, and for them, for their clients, and to get information that's coming through.
Can that pressure or thing on the female line on my left side be referring pain elsewhere? Or is it
Yes.
in my left side that I should be feeling it?
No. It could be referring pain to say you've got it in your like lower back or your hip, like it can go from different areas. So wherever you're feeling it, you can just follow the thread. So when you sit quietly and go into the body, it'll often be shown as like a shape or a color. And then if you can ask, like, can you help me follow it and just go through and see where it, and it might take you to a memory, and it might take you to another memory. And it's not always going to make sense. But if you can observe the path of where it's being shown, you can usually see where that thread, that cord, that connection comes in, and then you can do the work around it.
The reason I ask is because my whole right side is messed up. My right shoulder, my right hip, my right glute, and it's been a couple of years now where I've been really struggling in that area. And I did have someone say to me that the reason that my whole right side is being compromised is because my left side's pulling. She said that she was a remedial massage therapist, and she's like, no, it's not your right side. All the muscles on your left are so tight, they're pulling you, and therefore you're experiencing pain on the right side. I was like, I don't know, it sounds a little too far woo-woo. And then I was like, hang on a minute, let me just sit on that for a moment. And that's why I was asking, because I'm currently doing homeopathics to help release emotional trauma in the body. But one of the other things that I was really interested in is that, and I think this is why the family constellations and ancestral stuff keeps coming up, because we've got a lot of trauma, especially on the female side of my family. And yeah, so I really feel that. And I miscarried last year in October, and that process, even being pregnant for the 10 weeks that I was pregnant and then I miscarried, what came up for me is the female wound that I've got, the mother wound, the grandmother wound. I didn't, my mum was a single mum. My grandmother, her mother, not a very nice lady. She's got a lot of trauma. But that really came up for me during that time. And I just sat really, I was grieving, and it wasn't grieving my miscarriage. It was grieving what I did not have, the loss of my mum, the loss of my grandmother, the loss of, my great grandmother. And that it felt really heavy. And so I've been working through that a lot. And since then I've developed crazy pain in my right hip.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. And I think that it takes a lot of bravery to do that work. What I would say to you when the time feels right is if you can sit with your body and say, sit with the right hand side to start with. What are you trying to show me? What is it that you're trying to show me here? What wants to be seen? What wants to be acknowledged? What wants to be loved? And you can just see what comes up. Often when this has happened through the generations, there can be a real fear about abandonment and about being in a vulnerable state. So we overcompensate on the right. It's like, well, what do I do? How can I take responsibility? Like, we become very reliant on the masculine being the safe places, like I can provide and I can find safety in that. So actually it's learning to trust both. We want to trust the masculine, we want to trust the feminine. So this is a really wonderful opportunity for like your body. I mean, your body's quite literally on the right hand side. The masculine is continually reminding you it's there. I'm here. It aches, it's heavy. We do. I'm here. I'm present. And I would suggest, only if it feels right to you, that It's about thanking that part of you and that energy for all it's done and loving it and saying, I really want to welcome in that side. And I think you're going to find more balance in the body by doing that. And what is a really lovely exercise is actually to write to the masculine energy and thank it for all it's done, and then write to the feminine and say about the relationship that you want to have, the trust that you want to build, that there's power in the vulnerability, like there's power in being looked after, there's power in being deeply connected to your body, and then you start nurturing the relationship with both elements. And that's what makes us so powerful in this day and age, is when I always say we can be driven by the feminine, right? So the primary driving force is, what do I feel? What do I know? Where's my intuition guiding me? And that goes first. And then the masculine, with its lovely, like doing practical energy, pushes it through, right? So that might be a really lovely thing for you to look at. So if she was to come first and then this right hand side was to push her through, what might you be doing differently?
It's a really beautiful way that you just put that, because I feel like oftentimes, there's all this talk about getting more into your feminine and less in your masculine. And it often feels like you have to let go of the masculine and be fully embodied by your feminine. And I think that we forget a lot of the times that that balance is the most important. Part one cannot exist without the other. And so I love the way that you just explained that, because to have the masculine gently guide and push the feminine forward is just feels less overwhelming.
Yeah, I think you have to pick, right? Because again, we're coming down to that separateness, that one is good and one is bad. Look, the patriarchy doesn't work, and the matriarchy thousands of years ago didn't work. There's balance, right? That's what we're looking for. I love the masculine energy. I love that. And when I talk about masculine energy, I don't just mean men. I mean the energy of, like, masculine energies help me so much, do incredible things in my business, move things forward, protect, provide, boundaries, protection. I love it. And the feminine has so much beauty as well, that ability to be able to feel and to create and to connect and to be. So we just want to be making sure that we're making room for both. And often that requires of us to look at what feels safe and what doesn't. So often the feminine doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel safe to be. It feels like we spoke about earlier, that there's a weirdness in it, or that it's not to be trusted. I mean, how often have you come across that? Even with my own narrative with myself, it's like, don't trust that feeling, don't trust that hunch, don't trust that connection. Like, and actually, that's the superpower that we were born with. Thousands of years, we were consulted around crops and war and all of these things. They would come to us and ask, like, what do you feel? What do you sense? What do you know? We have it as an innate gift. Like, what a shame not to use it.
The other thing I think of as well is that we've become so disconnected from the feminine, from ourselves. And I can't help but be someone that wonders why. I love like ancient civilizations and all that kind of, I call it stories, myths, whatever people call it. But I'm really fascinated by ancient cultures. And so I think to myself, why have we disconnected? How can we find our way back home? And what I'm finding is the more I ask that question, the more the answer is not just one thing. There are so many healing modalities, so many ways to get there. And for someone like me, who's very committed to that healing journey, sometimes I feel like I don't know which way to go. And so I've started like writing things down and just staring at them to see which one
Yeah.
feels better for me right now. I'm like, that's the next step. But then I'm like, am I even doing this right? So it can sometimes, I don't know, feel a little overwhelming to, what's the next thing that I take?
And I think that you just gave so many clues there, because you talked a lot about doing. And actually, there is a place for the doing and the different modalities, but also there's great magic and healing that happens in the being. So actually, just saying maybe I don't need to do anything, because we can get into this energy sometimes. Well, if I journal, or if I meditate, and it becomes like do, like tick, 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 tick. That's not being in the feminine. The feminine is being. So being in the energy of stillness, quiet, surrender. Like I explain to my clients, I work a lot with activating that feminine and teaching clients about surrender. Surrender isn't something that we do. You can't do into surrender. And the best way that I can explain that is it happens in the body. It's like you're not doing, you're not holding, you're just like a complete release and softness of like, that's the energy of surrender. Like that's how it feels in the body. So actually something really powerful you could do is like, we could put that list of what can I do away and say, what can I just practice in my body? Softening, relaxing, slowing my breath, palms open, facing up, and just feeling like I'm in a state of like nothingness. That's feminine, and that's when you can receive, right? And it's a great thing to do. You know, if like you're launching, we do. Have you made space? On the other side is like, well, I won't do. I'm just going to practice being in my body and receiving. It feels very, very different.
I just had a light bulb moment.
Good.
Because I'm an ICF certified coach, right? So I understand you have to be in order to do and have, right? And so, but I'm sitting here like, but if I don't do my gratitude practice and I don't do my journaling, then how am I going to get to like um the part of the onion that I'm trying to peel? And I this thing inside of me is like, yeah, but if I don't do, then how am I going to be?
Yes.
So I was like, oh my God, I just caught myself being like, no, you have to do in order to be. And I'm like, no, you be first. And like to have that reminder that, yeah, I just had a moment.
You don't have to do to receive, right? So
Okay.
actually you receive it as an extension of who you are. It feels very, very different in the body. So my relationship with doing and my agreement with source is if there's anything for me to do, I'll be shown. Otherwise I get to receive it. So say there's about of money that I want to manifest. I'm moving house at the moment. So I've been doing a lot of manifestation around houses and moving and the perfect people coming in and being financially supported. I don't sit there thinking, what do I need to do? It's like, this is what I want. This is how it feels. Like I get to have it and I trust I'll be guided if there is something to do. So I have these sort of instant manifestations because I just don't attach any X and Y gives me Z. It's like I just get to have Z however that wants to come in. And the more that you can practice your innate ability as a woman just to open up and receive, it's like receiving pleasure, right, from the masculine or feminine. It's like we're receiving, we're not doing. It's like that's our gift. So we get to apply that to business and to work. And I certainly fell into this trap. It's like, to get to the next level, I've got to do. It's actually like, who do I need to be? Who do I choose to be? Like, how does she think? How does she feel? How does she show up? And how is she in her body? And I think that's going to be so powerful if you can make that switch of like, rather than being up here, just kind of soften, relax, and receive, then more things can just flow to you with an ease.
Yeah. What's coming up for me right now, not so much for myself, but in some of the conversations that I have with other women, and maybe for myself, maybe I'm not aware of something here, but it's what about those situations where you don't feel like you deserve it, whether you've got that I'm not enough stuff going on and therefore you can't receive, you can't accept, you're not willing to take it in. How does that play into this?
Like hugely. And I think this is something that we give ourselves grace and patience with. So actually, let's start with your ability to receive a compliment or support. So actually, we can start small. So actually, to make a leap for some people from where they are now to being deserving of like £1 million or unlimited clients or the love of their life or being in the shape they want to be in, whatever it is, can feel too much of a stretch. But it's about accessing the frequency rather than the thing, because it's all on the same plane, right? So in order to access the frequency is, can you practice receiving? So can you practice receiving something nice somebody says? Can you practice receiving a coffee when your friend offers to pay? Can you practice receiving a compliment or help from a sales assistant? Whatever it is. And that just starts opening this kind of portal and vibration of like, I'm up for this and I'm deserving of it. And then we build from that place. So I think this is another thing I see a lot in the healing and coaching space, that there's like a switch that's flipped, or somebody's got the magic answer, and then all becomes clear, right? They must have something that I have. They must know something I have. And that's not true. It's about you gradually opening yourself up to the vibration that you want to be on with a real intentionality. So something simple as, universe, I really want to learn to receive more. Every morning I wake up and open my arms and say, I'm open to receiving the wonders of the universe. Today is a perfect day for prosperity. I do that every morning. And then in my phone, I keep a note every day of where I've received something and where something magical's happened. So what I'm doing here is being intentional with my energy and clear about what I want. But I'm also programming my subconscious to look for magic, to look for places where I'm receiving. And the more that I look, the more that I see, the more that comes, and it like starts building and building and building. It's like a snowball. And before you know it, you're having such mind-blowing manifestations on a daily basis. My friends tease me, I'll call up and say, you won't believe what's happened today. It's like my most commonly used phrase. But that's where it's originated from, that intentional seed, and then built from there.
The highly critical person in me is like, how do you define something that's magical? For some people, it's so different. And so I know for myself, when I look at things, a lot of the times, and the stuff that I'm working on is, it is enough, because I have this thing of, it's not enough. It's not that great. It could be better. So how do you manage finding the magic in the world when, for someone like me, let's say, has a very critical eye for stuff like that?
Yeah. So I feel like it's like, again, a feeling based of something of wonder, and it can be something really small, it can be something big, it could be a big manifestation, or it could be a moment, like the way that it's like training your brain to look with a different lens. So again, it's how did it make you feel? Did it give you a moment of wonder, right? And that's a really wonderful place to start, to bypass that critical part. Just wants to be on guard and protect you, right? So it's like, well, let's not like let our guard down, or let's not, just take for granted that good things happen. Just be on it, Chanel, be on it, and just make sure that, you're constantly aware and you're doing and making things happen, because, we can't rely on things. So we get to just say, well, actually, where can I see these like moments of something that made me feel like, oh, okay, that was cool in my body. And I often use other people. That works really well for me, is to see the magic and feel the magic with other people. So really to recognize like the perfect conversation happened for me today, and like something landed for me, or the perfect person helped me today. And that helps me, because again, when my ego doesn't make it about me, makes it about other people, that lands better with me. We all have things that we know are weak points, and that definitely, for me, the more I can feel that connection for somebody else, or helping somebody else, or someone helping me, then that lands well with me.
That feels a lot easier to do.
Yeah.
Because even I was like, there are moments in my day when I'm like, oh, that felt good, or yes, that's a win, and tiny little things, even if it's like one extra person following the Spotify channel, for instance, because it's so hard to grow a Spotify channel versus a social media page. So that is easy to do.
Yeah. Well, like
I
that
love
thing,
that.
like maybe you're working with a client or you're interviewing a guest and you just intuitively knew something. That's the moment of wonder and magic, right?
Oh,
So you
yeah.
can find these little bits, like these little nuggets.
Mm. I want to shift gears because you said something, well, you wrote something really to me that piqued my interest because it's not every day that I come across someone who mentions their life path number
Yes.
in an email. So, talk to me about why a life path number might be important.
So I'm not a numerologist. I have studied numerology as part of when I was training to be a priestess, and but I do work very, very closely with a numerologist. So she actually can every year I consult her on like my business and my strategy and what personal year I'm in. I love numerology. So numerology, for people who don't know, is about a sequence and series of numbers based on your date of birth, which shows you your gifts, your potential weaknesses, your karmic patterns, what you came here to do in life. And then beyond that is the personal years that you get, where each year has an energy. So as you shift into another birthday, you have an energy associated with that year. So when I was going through like my separation, my divorce, and big, big shifts, I was in a life path. I was in a personal year 11, and that's really like intense spiritual energy. It's like being in a washing machine. From that, I went into a 3 year, which was much more about community and joy and lightness. It felt very like that. Now I'm in a 4 year. It's about often about house moves, foundation, structures, routine, stability, very practical, very orderly. And that very much feels like this year. So I think it's amazing, these numbers and how they help us. I mentioned to you about my life path 5. So I have 3 5s in my chart, a lot of 5. Now, the energy of 5 is they seek freedom, adventure, expansion, change. So I can see that I help with my clients with that, but also I can see it's one of the guiding forces in my life. Like I love travel, I love adventure. Um, I love to not be constrained. I like to be able to do things the way that I want to. I like to change things up. So that's something really powerful to know. I'm interested actually, do you know what your life path number is?
33.
Okay. Okay, wow. Big master
Mm.
number. Okay. Yeah. So there you go. And amazing. Makes sense you having this platform and this channel and the work that you're doing. Yeah. So it's fascinating when you know, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why, I think only twice in my life has someone told me their life path number or asked me. And so I was like, oh, I wonder what that's about for her. And I love talking about this stuff because I feel a lot like, there are pockets of wisdom that we can access. And when we're ready to access them, we, are able to access them. And this is one of those things that I think gave me a lot of clarity about who I was when I found out what my life path number was. I was like, that makes sense as to why I talk about the things that I talk about. And I tend to talk to people about them. And so, yeah, I mean, I really would love the details of this numerologist because I didn't realize that it was a thing. I didn't realize I could consult a numerologist. I'd love to find out what life year I'm in.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll give you her details. She's called Jo Solly and she's a Bizology. She's brilliant. So I'll give you her
Yeah,
details.
that's so interesting. Again, I just didn't realize that this was something that people did.
Yeah.
And so I
And it's
love that you actually
close to
consult
business.
this person.
As well as the year, each of the months within the year has a personal energy theme. So you get to use that in your business as well. So say I'm in a 4 year overall, but I'm in a 2 or a 7. So 2 will be like, well, okay, I'm going to focus on like harmony and balance. Or 7, I'm going to focus on wisdom and learning. So you get to 8 is about kind of money and abundance and CEO vibes. So you can look at each month and start planning your schedule around that as well, which is it's really cool to do. Get the energies of your numbers to support you.
That's amazing. Like
Yeah,
that's actually amazing. And I
cool.
love that you use that in your own life, like in your business and your strategy and everything that you're doing. Wow, that's I'm really looking forward to looking into that. And it was
Really
meant
cool.
to be that we were talking about this because it only just came up for me the other day about my life path. And I thought to myself, I want to reread what my life path number means because I am like, I feel like I'm on the cusp of something. this year. And I've been feeling like that for about 6 months. And I'm like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah,
I'll
she's
wait for it, but I
great.
want to know what it is.
Already help.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when you think of the work that you do then, everything that you've studied, I mean, and all the experiences that you've had, why do you think this work means so much to you?
That's a great question. I think because of the profound transformation I have undergone, it's really changed my life. Um, and I really feel like I'm making a contribution. You know, when you absolutely know that you're doing the right work and it lights you up, doesn't mean it always feels easy, but it feels to me like I'm absolutely doing what I was put here to do, using the gifts that I have. Like I've got a private client and I was working with her yesterday, and our call got moved a couple of times, and we ended up doing it on the anniversary of her dad's passing. And it was like astonishing to be able to give her the messages that were coming through, so specific, so accurate. Um, I've had some incredible experiences of being able to give guidance and give information that's coming through for people that's changed their lives. Like what a gift to be able to have that and to be able to use it and to be so abundantly supported as I do, meet incredible people. Like, it's completely changed my life. And I'm so glad that I listened to that voice when I was sitting in the corporate world that just said, I know you can't see it. I know you're scared. I know you've got no experience of running a business or even coaching people at that time, but just follow these breadcrumbs, follow these intuitive nudges, even if you can't see how they come together. So grateful for that woman in that moment who listened to the me who was there, who was guiding it, who was where I am now, if that makes sense. And we can always rely on ourselves. I want people to know that there's always like that higher self or that part of us in the future that will guide and hold our hands. We just have to be brave enough to surrender and let her lead us. And that's not easy to do, but it's so powerful, and that's why the work is so worth doing.
Is there anything that you wish you knew sooner?
Oh, gosh. I wish I'd known that I didn't have to sacrifice my own needs for everybody else. I wish I'd known that from a young age. I really wish I'd known that. But then also, I don't know whether I would be where I am on this path if I hadn't, because I think it's been a fundamental part of this journey. And I'm a big believer that everything happens, and even the realizations and everything is shown at exactly the right point. But I do wish I'd known that, because it's caused probably most of the problems that I've seen, whether it's been in my life, my business, financially. Like, it's always been based around it not being appropriate to have needs. But that's really shifted over the last year or so. Still a work in progress, but unrecognizable from where I was.
And what would you say is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
The way that I've always seen it in my mind's eye is that I see like the globe, and then I feel like I'm turning all these light bulbs on in people. And the more that I turn on, it's like this interconnected, like almost looks like an electricity grid. So I want my legacy to be turning on as many lights as I possibly can in people before I go.
That actually made me emotional. Like, I felt it here. I felt you here, and that was so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, it's the most perfect way to lead into my favorite question of all. Caroline, what do you love about being a woman?
Oh, so much. I love being a woman. Um, the magic of my body. in every way. In every way, her ability to feel, her ability to know, her ability to create, her ability to receive. That's what I love. It is such a privilege.
Yeah, I really feel that, and I'm learning that. And I think that, as I had mentioned before, being able to reconnect with that part of myself, especially through the miscarriage last year. And I think that that's what it was for, because I have profoundly changed from that moment, and I never appreciated my body. And I love when women actually say that that's what they love about themselves the most, that that's what they love about being a woman.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This has been so heart-filling for
Yeah,
me.
me
Thank
too.
you so much for this conversation. Please tell the listeners where they can find you and how they can connect with you.
And thank you so much for having me. You're so gifted at this, and you've got such a gorgeous energy. So thank you, and thank you to Nuna as well for introducing us. Wonderful Nuna. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Caroline Britton Coaching, or my website, which is www.caroline-britton.com, and there's loads of free resources on there and loads of audio trainings and all sorts of things that you can go on and enjoy.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. And if you are interested in connecting with Caroline, I will include in the episode description and across socials links and ways you can do that. So if you haven't already, head on over to Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, and Instagram and follow the Skin I'm In podcast to be the first to know when new episodes drop. Caroline, thank you so much for being a guest on the Skin I'm In podcast.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.
When I asked Caroline about the legacy she wants to leave behind, her answer resonated deeply: to turn on as many lights in as many people around the world as possible. It was as if beautiful bells were ringing in my ears when I heard that. I truly felt it in the depths of my heart. I've said it countless times on this podcast. Our greatest work as women is finding our inner light, switching it on, and helping others do the same so we can illuminate the world with our collective brilliance. That, I believe, is part of all our legacies. Caroline's words reminded me that the deeper the darkness, the greater the potential for transformation. We are meant to dive into the shadows, process them, and emerge with new wisdom, clarity, and strength. And as hard as it may be, we have to trust that a greater force is always at work rearranging things so we can be free from whatever is weighing us down or holding us back. A reminder I really needed at this point in my life. One of the most powerful moments in our conversation, though, was when Caroline spoke about how we often mistake our intuition for being wrong, simply because things don't unfold the way that we expected it. But that's not failure, nor is our intuition wrong. It's an invitation to take radical responsibility for our healing. It's time to do the work, unravel ancestral patterns, and seek wholeness so we can finally break cycles and pass that wisdom forward. Because in the end, isn't that what legacy truly is? Not just what we leave behind, but the light we ignite in others, the ripple effect of our healing, our courage, and our willingness to rise from the depths. The path isn't always clear and the work isn't always easy. We know that on this show. But every time we choose to heal, to trust, to step into our own brilliance, we give others permission to do the same. So maybe the question isn't just, what legacy will I leave? But whose light will I help turn on today? With gratitude and grace, have a wonderful day.